Of course, we elect leaders to do something for us. Leaders are right. Oftentimes, we talk about leadership, the leadership problem in Nigeria, and we say that, everything rises and falls on the back of leadership. To discuss how we can continue to get, how we can get leadership right, and if we're getting it right, continue to get it right, we have with us Issa Ozi-Salami, beg your pardon. He is the president, Nigerian Institute for Industrial Security, and an immediate past member of the ICPC board, and also of the African Union Advisory Board on Anti-Corruption. You're welcome to our studios here in Abuja.
Thank you very much, Murphy.
Thank you. Now, looking at what has happened so far, I'm sure you must have a lot to say on the just concluded 2019 elections. And I'm sure that, normally when you see, the violence that has characterized these elections, we have to ask the question, is this really about leadership? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, actually, the leadership question has never been properly addressed adequately in this country. We seem to recruit leadership more by chance than by any systemic approach, like in other countries.
By chance?
Yes, by chance, because, I mean, during the military regime, for instance, if you have friends, even up to now in politics, it is the friend, the influence, those you know, that pick you, not because of your antecedents. For instance, in other climes, leadership are deliberately recruited. You go to their academic background, you look at their character, and then just like, you get a background check and so on. And they are investigated by the SSS and the intelligence agencies, so that you have a very good picture of who he is, and then you can project what to expect. But in this country, it is just more of connections, friendships, and these things are not normally based on any merit. So you find a lot of organizations where the wrong people get into leadership. And when they get into leadership, they mar the organization. And then the next person who may also come by that same chance. And even the removal of leadership is also by chance, because you suddenly discover that a particular person comes to office and he wants to place his friends in places. So even those that are doing very well are chopped off and then, replaced. And there is no clear-cut way of doing things. Let me give you an example. We have the civil service commissions. There are certain statutory commissions that the headships have a tenure, either because of political influence or change of political leadership. They are not patient enough to study the laws that created these institutions, and they sometimes just disband. They just say, oh, the boards of the following organizations are dissolved. All administrations make this mistake.
It's a mistake.
Yes, a mistake, because you don't follow the rule of law which you swore to follow. And rule of law is everywhere. It's not just in one circumstance, and you don't pick and choose. So
did that happen to your board, just as an aside?
No. Fortunately, we finished our tenure. Our tenure, I mean, a 4-year tenure, we are finished. So we don't have that problem. But what I'm trying to say is that some people will go to court and challenge their removal. And the court will insist that they have been wrongly removed and they have to be paid. And sometimes the court awards punitive compensation. And this comes from the public purse. And the person who takes this decision is not punished for it. So nothing stops the next person from also doing the same thing, because he has nothing to lose. So we don't have post-mortem in a lot of things that happens. And then we don't do thorough analysis of issues, of matters, and so on. I mean, you were discussing the leadership question in the National Assembly now. And you can see that the issues that are coming on the table has little to do with competence, background, experience, knowledge, and ability to negotiate. And all these things are part and parcel of leadership.
Oh, the National Assembly, the parties will disagree with you. They will disagree with you, and they will tell you that the people that they have put forward have been in the chambers for quite a while, in their respective chambers for quite a while, and should have the requisite knowledge and understanding of these chambers to be able to take hold of the leadership.
No, but you know, for every position, there's what they call job description, and then also man specification. Nobody has done this. It is just a matter of relationships. I mean, right now, the candidates that have been put forward by the ruling party were the same candidates in 2015. And it looks as if they are even traveling on the same route. I don't want to discuss politics because I'm very apolitical, but the fact is this, that we don't even go and look at history and say, where did we have these pitfalls so that we correct them? And then we keep making one mistake over another and so on and so forth. Whereas in other climes, they take stock. And taking stock means checking yourself and so on. And then they compare notes also. I mean, I participated some time ago in the country review of Kenya under the African Peer Review Mechanism. And I handled the anti-corruption aspect of the Kenya country. And there were certain things that we saw there that we recommended to other African countries to copy. And the recruitment process, for instance, they ask people to apply.
That's a leadership recruitment process?
Yes. They ask people to apply for their anti-corruption headship. And then when you apply, they have a panel that will check out what, who you are, what you have done, what you want to do. Then you are assessed and appointed. But in this country, even look at the position of the chairmanship of INEC. The waste panel recommended that it should not be done by the President, by the executive, that it should be done by the National Judicial Council. That will be more removed from political considerations and so on. But nobody wants to look at that aspect of the report. It is there. So our problem in this country, even the followership, are not as demanding of good leadership as they ought to be. Everybody is so self-centered. They just want you to satisfy their own immediate needs. And once you can do that, you're a good man. And we forget what we are taught either as good Muslims or good Christians, because all these things are there in the books. Leadership, the functions of leadership, the criteria for picking leadership. But these things are never examined. And you find people today who are going to the Senate and probably are just coming into politics for the first time. You find people today who are governors and perhaps it is their first job. I mean, it may not be today, but in the recent past. And
the trend will continue if something is not done about it. How do you think that, even if we cannot change the trend in one fell swoop, how can we begin to chip at it in such a way that perhaps mindsets will start to change?
Well, that's why I talked about taking stock from time to time. But each time we make an attempt to take stock, either by setting up a panel, I just gave the example of the waste panel and so on, or even the national conference by the government of Jonathan. these things will just stay in the shelf and be gathering, dust. In the past, like during the Murtala regime, within 6 months, a lot of decisions were taken. And Murtala did very, very well.
But that was also a leader by happenstance.
That's what I mean, I myself, I also benefited from this leadership by accident that I'm talking about. When I was appointed to go to Nigerian paper mill, Jeba, as executive chairman, I just had it over the radio. But I took it as a challenge then, because I saw an opportunity to Nigerianize the place. I saw an opportunity to get a government corporation working with private sector discipline. I saw an opportunity to create a management culture that would last. Again, my removal was also by accident. So whoever I was trying to train to take over from me and perpetuate this culture did not arise because somebody was also brought in. So we have a long, a problem that has lasted. I think the first regime, the Awolowos, the Sadaonas, the Azikiwes, and so on and so forth, were very meticulous. Then the next regime, the regime of Gowon, also tried, and then since then the standards started falling, and very sharply too. So unless even the political process that time, before you were made a minister, certain considerations will be made, certain consultations will be made. You know, when we talk of consultation, if you take a decision and you just want people to accept it, that's not consultation. If you want to consult, you will talk to, a number of stakeholders and see their mood and their tendency. Then before you realize the person that can fit into that acceptance.
You know, we've been speaking largely on what has happened to us, especially in our political circles. But in fairness to, will I say, the youth population, we're beginning to see more and more institutions come up. Maybe, I don't know if institutions is the right word to do, but private sector-led initiatives trying to bring into young people the attributes of leadership. Letting them know that they are responsible for their futures, for their respective futures, if I can use that word, but the future of a collective as well. And we're beginning to see more and more. Maybe we should see more, or maybe we should see something more organized or something more centralized, I don't know. But we see more and more. It might be a seminar here, it might be a school there, it might be a conference there on leadership. And we see more and more of that happening these days. I don't know if you've observed that.
No, I mean,
and whether that can have any impact whatsoever on this question of leadership.
No, what you are saying, I have written so many papers on leadership. Some of them were, most of them were published. And they have not made the required contribution. And the universities of management that we have, the departments of management, teach leadership. They hold conferences. We have the Institute of Personnel Management, of which I'm a fellow. We have the Nigerian Institute of Management, of which I'm a fellow. And all these people promote good management. But as I said, good management also requires good followership, because leadership is not in a vacuum. And where you have a lot of people who don't know their rights from their wrongs, who don't even know what leadership should bring to them, if it delivers very little, they clap. Whereas if they were to know, then they would be more thorough
Where did that come from? You know, we've been told that, oh, that happens in political circles where a governor, maybe he's done a few roads, he's built one or two hospitals, you know, and everyone says, oh, he's working, you know, he has really tried. People say, oh, it's because Nigerian people are not very difficult to please. They just want you to do something for them. And, you know, if you want to be corrupt, at least do some work. That's what, you know, where did that come from? Is it that we've seen such a terrible line of leaders over the time that when somebody does something, we're ready to be impressed?
In fact, the situation you are talking about is much worse now, because there are certain things that are taken for granted in other climes.
Yes.
But in this country, not so. And usually, when they say you excel, it means you have done something above the norm. But in this country today, in many states that are paying salaries regularly,
they're doing well.
They're doing very well. Whereas this is something that is contractual. I mean, it's as bad as I feel very sad each time I see these kind of things. And somebody comes and says he has constructed a road. There are certain questions that you should ask. That road, how much was spent on constructing it? Vis-a-vis the general cost and so on. I mean, for instance, the federal government has what you call the due process policy. That due process policy was established about 3 regimes ago. But up till now, the apex body that is supposed to oversee the whole thing, the Council on Procurement, National Council on Procurement, has not been established. And nobody is even talking about it. So these are some of the missing links that, you know, unless we learn to do very well. And even when we come and talk about corruption, we are not systemic about it. And if a leader...
Are systemic in fighting it?
In fighting it. If a leader...
Because we know we already have systemic corruption.
Exactly. Because if a leader is determined... Look at what has happened in Kenya. The president, there was a lot of hostility between the Kenyatta and Odinga after the last election. But some miracle came, and they had a breakfast meeting where they all embraced themselves, talked truth to themselves, and decided to say what has gone wrong. And they came to the conclusion that corruption was at the root of all that the problem in the country, and that now they are going to fight corruption, and nobody will be a secret cow, whether government or opposition. And they all endorsed this agreement. And I thought that was very, very significant. There are certain issues that when you politicize, you only make matters worse. There are certain things that cut across. And we have the Governors Forum in this country. The Governors Forum is supposed to be a place for comparing notes. They have a secretariat, peer review, but I don't think they do much of it. And after the Governors Forum, then the governors of each party have their own forum. And you know, what you hear here is likely to be different from what you hear there. And there's no opportunity to streamline and enforce what has been accepted. So this is our problem. And then, as I said, the followership, we are so weak, either because of poverty. When I say poverty, I'm not talking of poverty in terms of naira. Poverty of enlightenment, poverty of education. And when I talk of education, I'm not talking of degrees and so on. You may find somebody with PhD who behaves like an illiterate, whereas you may find somebody who is barely literate, but he has principles and he expounds them and so on and so forth. But when you have what is dominant, I mean when you have issues of vote buying, for instance, which is prevalent among all the parties. And then when you want to contest an election, and you have to make a huge investment, all these things are very negative.
It's a very interesting conversation we're having with Mr. Ozi-Salami, who is the president of Nigerian Institute for Industrial Security. It's our closing moments with him, and we're about to ask the question, how can we improve? He's talked about how we have leaders appointed or, who happen upon us mostly by accident. But how can we have a deliberate policy or a deliberate process to recruit leaders who will lead us aright? Your thoughts on it?
You see, I think if you look at the rules, if we were to allow the rules to work.
The roots?
The rules.
Rules,
yes,
okay.
Because there are rules that guide some of these things. For instance, if we look at the public service, the private sector, they're doing very well in terms of their recruitment process and so on. But when we come to the public sector, we have more problems. I'm not saying that the private sector is free completely. Like in the private sector, when the UAC was a big company, or the Lever Brothers of this world, they had a system whereby they were identifying who will be the next, who will succeed and so on. And those people will even be exposed to certain trainings and so on. So by the time they arrive, everybody will just know that that's the right person. And that also encourages others coming up to follow those examples. There was mentoring, deliberate. But in the public service, today we have what we call the Federal Character Commission, which is supposed to look at the recruitment process to ensure that it reflects the character of the country, that every tribe or every region or every group is given a fair chance. We have the prescription that recruitment process has to be cleared. But a lot of organizations don't follow, and there's no repercussion. So once in a while, when we're in ICPC, I remember we were able to go into some of these things, and there were one or two people that we use as examples. So it is not enough to have the rules without checking and verifying that those rules are actually followed, and without ensuring that those who don't follow the rules get the punishment, because that is the only deterrent. Human beings have selfish tendencies. It's universal. But in other climes, because of these rules, because of the essence of what is called integrity in the process, it is not enough to do the right thing, but it has to be seen that you have done the right thing.
Are you optimistic, though? Do you think that we might improve as time goes on?
I believe we need to be careful, because things are getting worse. If things were improving every day, I would have answered, yes, I'm an optimist all my life. But I think we need to look inwards more at our systems and allow these systems to function. If they function, it will be a win-win situation for everybody.
Well, you can say that again, and I really want to be optimistic too, but when you end it like that, we hope that 2019 will definitely be better than what we have seen in the past, but we don't know if that's going to happen. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
Mr. Ozi-Salami is President, Nigerian Institute for Industrial Security. He is one of the immediate past members of the ICPC board and also of the African Union Advisory Board on Anti-Corruption.